today we are looking at Power BI service and what's the benefit of, publishing your reports to the service, to Power BI service. It is so that other people can have access to it. That means you are working in an organization and then you want to share the report with maybe the team leads or people in HR, people in sales, people in marketing. You want them to have access to the report, but not to be able to, to have admin right to the report. So let's assume what I have on my screen is my dashboard. I have slider for employee ID, slider for region, and then I have a pie chart on the screen. And this is what I want to share with with the team. So what do? If I click on the publish icon, it says it publishes this report online in the Power BI service. It will give me the options of the workspaces that I have, that I have access to. Now, depending on where you work, you may have access to workspaces in the organization, within the organization. That means, for example, they've created a workspace for HR, but based on the account I am using for this training, I only have access to my workspace. Of course, that means the workspace sits in my own space alone. So since that's the only option I have, of course, I'll just select my workspace and then I will select it. So once I select it, it will ask you, if you have not saved it before, it will ask you to save. But because I've already published this to the Power BI service, that's why it's asking me, do you already have a semantic model named sample in Power BI? Will you want to replace it? Yes, I want to replace it because I know I've modified it and then I'm comfortable changing whatever I had there before. So I'll click replace. Right. At times it will ask you to save again, even though you had saved. So just click save and then you choose the workspace and then it publishes it. Now it has successfully published this report to Power BI service. So how do I view the report? If I click open sample.pbix in Power BI. Now, if you look at that, .pbix is the file extension when you save a file in Power BI desktop. So now I've published this to the web, to this to Power BI service. If I click on it, then it brings it up. Now this is my report. So if I share this with someone, that person will be able to come here and interact with my report. So if I click on the east, I can see. If I click on south, or west, or north, or I can click again to unselect. I can choose the employee ID, whichever one I want to see, and I can use control to select more than one. I can interact with it. Right. Now, if you look towards the right-hand side of the screen, we can see the filter pane. It is visible because in my Power BI desktop, I enable come back to my Power BI desktop, and then we can see the icon that shows like an eye. So if I click on the icon, there's a cross across it. That means it will not be visible in my Power BI service. So if I click publish again, and I click save, because I've made a change, it will ask me to save. So I've clicked saved. I'm choosing my workspace again. Then I want to replace yes. Then I just wait for it to complete publishing. Now it has published, and then I can click on it. Now, this is my new report. It is different from the one I had before. The one I had before, I could see the filter pane, but now I have disabled it so that you will not be able to see it. Any user will not be able to see the filter pane. And of course, they can still interact with my reports. So I can select more than one, and then I can select all. So that is my, publishing to Power BI. And then, of course, if I want to now share with people within my organization, I can click on this share button, and then I can now type the email address of the people that I want to share with. For example, I work in Coca-Cola, and I have, the email addresses of the team members I want to share it with. I will type the email address there. I can put a message in there, and then I click send. Otherwise, I can copy the link. I can send it via email, via Teams, or even in PowerPoint. So once you put the email address and you click on send, it sends a notification to the recipient, and then they can now view the report. If I have not enabled it and you want to come and view it, it will give you an error. And of course, I can also come to file and manage permissions. So under manage permissions, I will see the people that have access to it. And of course, I can manage that permission. I can remove access to it. I can add access to it. So it depends on what just works for you. Right. If you also look at my screen, you can see my workspace just towards the lower part of the screen. So if I have more than one workspace, I can see them under the my in also under the workspaces. I'll just select on it, and then it will bring me to that workspace. But because I have just one, and that's what I can see on the screen. Now, when you publish to Power BI service, you have two different options. That means if you want to view the report, you can click on the report itself. So you have the report mode, the reports file, and then you have the semantic model. So with the report, you can view what exactly is in that report. That's this report. Whereas if you click on the semantic model, it will not show you it will not show you that report itself. But of course, you can still relate, you can still, do some editing via the semantic model. If I come back to the workspace and I look at my semantic model, I have an icon that says refresh now. I have another one that says schedule refresh. So that means if I want to refresh it manually, like now, I can come here and then I can click refresh. So it refreshes my data straight with the data source. If I click on the schedule refresh, okay, let me click on the refresh now. If I click on it, it has refreshed. So that means it has been refreshed and that is fine. Whereas if I click on schedule refresh and I come to this refresh, now depending on where you work, you may not be able to schedule a refresh. Now, because of the policy of the account I'm using, I'm unable to schedule a refresh. But assuming it has been enabled, I'll be able to turn this one on, or as at night is off. So I'll be able to turn it on, and then I can now choose the frequency of my refresh. That means, do I want it daily? Do I want it weekly? Do I want it monthly? I can decide. And then how often do I want it? Even within a day, how often do I want it? So I can schedule a refresh via the semantic model, and then I just click on that button, and then it brings me to this point, and then I choose the options that works for me. If you really need to, schedule a refresh, speak with the IT team. They will be able to give you that privilege, and then you'll be able to do that via, on your system. I want to talk about the types of data refreshes that we have. While creating your reports in Power BI Desktop, you can always click this refresh button to refresh your data. That means if you've got a new data set, connected to the Power BI, for example, it's in a folder, and then you've got a new data set in the same folder with the same name, the same structure, you can just click the refresh button, then it refreshes and gives you the latest report based on that data. Right. While you have published to Power BI, what options do you have as well? When you have published to Power BI service, can you still refresh? Yes, you can still refresh. So I'll say data refresh in Power BI refers to updating the data in your Power BI report and dashboard so that they can reflect the most recent data from the data source. Anything has changed. For example, you are dealing with sales data and you want to check the sales report for the quarter, and you have just finished quarter 2, you are moving to quarter 3, you can just refresh it and then it gets you those recent data. Now, what are the types of refreshes we have in Power BI. We have the manual refresh, and that is by clicking on this icon. You just click on it, manually it refreshes your data. And also you have the on-demand refresh. And of course, that one you can do it via the Power BI service. Then you click on the, if I come back to my workspace and I click this refresh button, that is it. That's on-demand refresh. Whereas the next button beside it is the schedule refresh. And that gives you the opportunity to refresh it either daily, weekly, monthly, or as may be required. Now remember that while you are refreshing within a day, you can refresh it up to 8 times by using schedule refresh. That means you can schedule it and say, okay, refresh it 8 times within a day, and then of course it will do that. And then if you have a premium account, you can refresh it up to 48 times in a day. And then there's another one. If you connect your data to live data, those are the types of refreshes that we have. And then why will a refresh fail? If for example, if I'm in Power BI desktop and I click on this refresh button, why will it fail, or why can it fail? What can cause it to fail? So if you have changed the location of your data, for example, if your data is in desktop and on your desktop, you have a folder called data DOM, and the data that connects to this report is in that folder. If you move that folder from that desktop, you move it to another location and you click the refresh button, it will not work because the path has been broken. Connection to that path has been broken. So you need to change, or you need to, amend that. And how can you do that? You can come to data source settings and then you can change it from here. So this is the location of my own, of the data I'm using. And of course, you can change the source, you can edit it as it works for you. And also, if you have invalid credentials, you work in an organization and you don't have access to schedule that refresh, it will not work. If you have gateways configured and it's not properly configured, it will still not work. If you remove your data source or you change the file path, of course, the refresh will not work. So if you try to refresh and it isn't working, you just have to just troubleshoot and see what the error is. Understand the error, fix it. If it is a part, if it's a connection, just fix it up, and then you'll be able to refresh your data. Yeah, welcome again to our class today. And what we'll be looking at today is just looking at how you can publish to Power BI service, and then some other little tips for data analysis. Right, for you to publish to Power BI service, or if I start with, why should we publish to Power BI service? Now, let's say I have created a dashboard and then I want other people to have access to this dashboard. Remember our row level security. Remember that anyone that has full access to my desktop version of my file can modify it. So I may want to limit that to just maybe my line manager or my colleagues as an analyst, so that in case I'm on leave, they can still go back to my data and then refresh that and do a lot of things. Right. But within the organization, let's say I work in, let's say, in an hospital, and I have managers, I have line managers, I have nurses, doctors that want to see reports of how patients are doing, wait times, and all those kind of things. Maybe staff reports, attendances, missed appointments, did not attend appointment, all those kind of reports. And I have it in my own dashboard. I've created that dashboard and I want to share with people. So Power BI service gives me that room to give access to some people. It may be a group of people, it may be, the entire organization, just depending on who I want to have access to that report, and then what is the, security level, what is the policy in place in the organization. For some organizations, you cannot share a dashboard outside the space of that organization. That means if I work with FBN, I cannot share a report with somebody that works with GTB. So it depends on the policy of the organization. But in our context, I've created a dashboard and I want to share with some certain set of people so that they can go there and see a summary of everything I've created. Just see the dashboard, they can, interact with it, they can filter it, they can see what I've done, they can see the trends over time. So, of course, on my screen now, I've loaded my data. I can view it from the table view. I can see what data I have. Then I can go back to the report view, and then let's say I have a metrics, and then I just want the employees, and then I want the sales, and then I want the postcode. Right? Let's say this is a report and I want to send it out to other people to see. So what do I do? The first thing I need to do is to save my reports. Now, if you do file and then save as, now, of course, I can browse this device, but if my organization is using SharePoint, I can save it on SharePoint. And what's the benefit of SharePoint? Anywhere you are, once you log on to your to the system, you can access that. It's not sitting on your local disk. It's not sitting on your system. So it's just, in the cloud. But of course, I want to save it on my device because it's local. Then I can save it as maybe, let's say, report May 25. And then I click save. Now, before I click save, you can see the type of file. So if it is Power BI desktop file, it saves it as .pbix. So that's Power BI desktop. That means I have created a whole new dashboard in using Power BI desktop. So the file extension is .pbix. So if I click on save, it's going to save it as report May25.pbix. So that means if I ask you to share your dashboard with me and you are sharing the .pbix file with me, that means I can modify it. I can, I can tweak it. I can remove things. I can change the visuals because I have the real, the real file with me. So if you are sharing it with line managers, you are sharing it with, maybe with doctors, with nurses, you are not sharing that .pbix file. That's why you need to publish. So yeah, if you are publishing, they are only viewing it as a dashboard on the cloud. They are not having access to the real desktop file. So how do I publish? I can see this button here, the publish button. So if I click publish, now because I have not logged in, that's why it's asking me for my email address. And unfortunately, you cannot use a personal email. You cannot use at gmail.com or at yahoo.com. So you have to use your organizational email to be able to have access to the Power BI service. So that means if you have a school email address, something at something.edu.ng or at ac.uk, it will work. So you can log in and then you can publish your workspace. Or if you have a workspace in your department, you can have access to that as well if you have been given access. So, but because I don't have that access, that's why it's asking me for this. Now, let's assume I have the access. Once I click the publish, it asks me which workspace you want to publish into. So by default, once I have that ability to publish, I have my workspace. That's if I want to publish anything, at least I have one workspace where I can publish it to, and that is my workspace. But of course, organizations, they have, policies, they have rules, and they may say, okay, if you have any report that goes to HR, it must be published in this particular workspace. So of course, you may have different workspaces depending on where you work. So you just choose the right workspace. And if you don't have any other one except your own workspace, you can put it there. But the disadvantage is that once it's in your workspace, you are still the owner, except you now give people access to be able to edit it, or you give people full access to that. But if it is in the central workspace, for example, you have HR, dashboards, and then you choose that workspace. Everyone that have access to that particular workspace will be able to access your work, and then they can, manage it and just work with it. So of course, you just click on the workspace and then you click continue. Of course, it will ask you to save. If you have not saved in the last few seconds, it will ask you to save again. Once you click save, then it publishes it to the cloud. And then it gives you a link. Once you click on the link, it brings up the dashboard via your Explorer. That's your Internet Explorer if you are using Google Chrome or Edge or whatever it is. And then people can now have access to it by when you now give them access. You Okay, so in the next class, I will dwell more on that. So after you've published to Power BI service and you have given somebody access to it, the person can view. But if the person does not have access to it, you've not given the person the access, even though it has a link, it will not open. So depending on your organization, some organizations they will say once you are an employee in this organization, you will be able to view any reports, although you'll not be able to edit it. But some will say, except you tell us that this person actually needs access to Power BI service, that's when we can give this person the access. So it is not every organization that would, just give everyone that access. So it depends on, the policy around your organization. And also, it is at that level that you can determine the auto refresh, the refresh frequency of your dashboard. And we'll be looking at that in the next class. So let's say I've created my dashboard and this report, occurs on a monthly basis. For example, it is the performance report and my head of department needs to take this to board to say, okay, in HR, this is how they are performing. And this meeting occurs every month. Now, what's the source of my data? Let's assume the source of my data comes from HR shared services, and they send me that they just dump the file in a folder. So let's say on the SharePoint, we have a folder where that regular update is always dumped. That means I know that between the 1st and the 4th of the month, a new data would have been put in that folder. So after creating my dashboard, of course, I'm working with the data of April 2025. Now, a new data has been put in that same folder. I don't have to delete my dashboard and recreate it. No. So far, the name of the file is still the same. The number of rows, the number of columns are still the same. Now take note, the number of columns are still the same. That means assuming I have 7 columns in my data and the new refresh that was dumped in that same folder is still 7 columns. And I want to see the latest reports. I want to see how the department is doing for this month. Remember what I'm seeing on the screen now is for last month. A new data has been put in the folder, and I want to see how they are doing for this month. The only thing I need to do is just click this refresh. Once I click this refresh button, Power BI connects back to that data source and refreshes the data. So if it has been updated, I will see the updates on my dashboard. But as I said, the number of rows should be the same. Now let's now say while whoever is generating the reports using maybe SQL or whatever it is that they are using to generate the reports, he has now added an extra row. Power BI will complain that extra column, the number of column in the new data is different from the number of columns I had in the previous one. So what do we do? So I can go back and transform my data, and then I can now include that new column. So if I click on transform data, we can see the source. We can see the applied steps. So if I click on the source data, if I click on the source and I click this drop down arrow, I can see, of course, this is my source. We can see the sheet 1, And then this is the kind of sheet, blah, blah, blah. Then these are the headers, and this is the change type. Now, if you look closely at the code in this formula bar, I have postcode, I have town, I have category, I have sales, I have employees, which is the data I have. So if I have an additional column in the new data, I can manually add it here, and then it just increases it. It just, Power BI just agrees to it. So far, the number of columns in the real data is the same thing as the modification I have done. And then it will refresh and everything will be fine. So that means if your data is complaining about refresh, you can come back to transform data, check and see the number of columns you have versus what is in the source data. Of course, you can go to the folder and then open that Excel file or the CSV file, or if you are using API, you can go and check and see if a new row has been added, a new column has been added, or just be sure. I've okay, I was working on a set of data, and I was trying to, generate an insight, and the insight I needed to generate, I needed to create additional column. So of course, I should know that that's additional column I have created will make it equal to give Power BI an issue when it wants to refresh. So I have to go and modify my data when I just go to transform data and then come here and then just add it. And at times, if the columns are merged, it will just tell you the number of columns, and then you can just increase it. If it's 20 or 21 or 22, you can just increase it like that, and then it will be fine. Then you have to close and apply after doing that transformation. Another reason why your refresh may not work, like if it may give you error, is if the column name has changed. Now, instead of having postcode, if I have just put it as address, or instead of having category here, I've changed it to maybe department. Now, in the old data, it was category, but in the new data now, they have changed it to department. So it will confuse Power BI. The third column is category in the data I have, but now it is called department. What do I do? So it's just to come here and modify the code. And it is easy to read. You can see where you have postcode, just change it to the new one and call it maybe address, or you come to the category and just change it to department. Once you change it and it is the same with whatever you have in your new data, then everything will work. And of course, remember, if you are bringing the data from SQL or SQL, you can see a preview of the data. You can see how the columns are named. So you can now compare it to what you have. If it is different, if there's a mismatch, just correct it, and then your Power BI would be fine. And also remember that if you are using SSRS, you are using SQL, reporting system, you can do that directly. Like instead of coming to BI, you can just connect it and then it integrates. So once you change whatever in SQL, you change the names of the columns, you can also just effect same in your data. Right. I want to quickly talk about some tips, as an analyst. What are the tips that can help you excel in this role? You may be switching career. You may be, maybe you've been an analyst and you just want to be a better analyst. What are the things that can really help you? So for you to create your dashboard, I would say clean and prepare your data before modeling. That means don't just import data and start working with it like that. It will be good for you to clean your data, transform it. Click that transform button and look at the way your data is. Is that what you actually want? Imagine you're looking at a date column and it is not actually date, it is general. If you click the transform button, you can see, okay, postcode ABC, that's fine because it's a mixture of text and numbers. But if you have dates, it should actually say dates. If you have sales, it should be currency, so that it should be all numbers. Or if it's fixed decimal number or decimal number, don't go and put it as a text, because Power BI will not be able to summarize it. Okay, so I would say prepare your data, clean it up, then use meaningful naming conventions. When you have a column that is employees or that is department, let it be department. Don't just use category like I have used here, because I'm looking at category. What does category mean? If somebody comes and opens my file, he will not understand what category mean, except I've documented it properly. So you should use meaningful naming conventions. Then you should test your interactions across visuals. Remember that you can make your visuals to, I mean, maybe your slicers or your visuals to not interact with all of the visuals. So you should know that, okay, whatever you have chosen to do is what will work for your audience. If your audience would not like to be selecting different visuals, different filters for different visuals, then you should make it work for everything. Or just use a drill through, drill down, and just make sure that you are putting your audience in mind while creating your dashboard. Then keep it simple. Keep your dashboard simple and action driven. Keep it simple. Remember, the aim of creating a dashboard is to pass information, is to create insights, so that when somebody is looking at your dashboard, they can make sense out of it. But if I'm looking at your dashboard and it is too wordy, it is too colorful, I have purple, I have yellow, and I have orange somewhere, and I have green again, I have red somewhere, that's maybe too much. It may be a strain to the eyes. And instead of me understanding the insight or deriving insight from the data you're giving onto me, I'm only just trying to block out my eyes from the numerous colors that you have. And then you should have backups of your file. That means your pip.pbix file, if you have it saved locally, that means even if you are saving it on the SharePoint, still have it saved locally. So that in case you just need to refer to the old version, you can always refer to it. And then I will say document your process. It's very easy to create dashboards, make presentations, but make sure you document your process, so that if you're on leave, if you are changing job, you are changing role, you are changing organization, somebody can come into your role and just go through the documentation and understand everything that you have done, in the past. So make sure your documentation is up to date. Okay, and then when you're creating dashboard, I would say understand the why behind your report. Why is this report required? Why is it needed? Why should I create this report? What is it that they want to see from this report? So if you know the destination from the beginning, it helps you, in the pathway. You can easily get to that destination so far you know what you are looking at. So of course, you should understand the why behind your reports. What decisions will this dashboard support? Who are the users? Who are my audience? Okay, I've mentioned you should clean your data very well before you start working on it. Remove duplicates. If some values will skew your data, make sure that you have handled them properly. And then I will say you should use your DAX effectively. If you need to create a DAX that will show you maybe average of this, sum of that, sum if of this, just make sure that you maximize, all these tools. Okay, I've said you should design it with the end user in mind. So you should use cards for KPIs, slicers for filters, charts for trends, and keep your visuals clean. Label appropriately. Where you have kilogram, don't put gram there. Where you have naira, don't put kobo there. Where you have pounds, don't go and put naira there. Imagine you are doing conversion on your dashboard, talking about maybe effect of whatever it is, and you're comparing the naira and the pounds. And instead of putting 2,000 pounds is equals to 5 million naira, you now put 5 million pounds is equals to 2,000 naira. You have just lost your audience there. Okay, and then I will say make it interactive, use drill through, tool tips, slicers to enhance user control. And we have talked about this in our previous videos. And then I will say publish and share professionally. Give access to only those that need the dashboard. And remember that once you give access to somebody and you send that email to them, you can't recall it. You have given them the access. Now, I've received an email that Timothy has given me access to performance review or salary review, and I am not in that team, I'm not supposed to know about it. That doesn't send a good message. And then I would say keep learning, keep learning. We've not been able to do everything about Power BI because of the limited time we have for this course. It's just 4 weeks, but I would say be curious, always, want to learn more. Personal development is your responsibility, not your employer's responsibility. So you should push for it. You should learn more and practice more. You know, I would say take on responsibilities. Take on responsibility. If you have an opportunity to, learn more or to take up a new project, I would say go for it. You can only get better. You can only get better. Ask questions and then you'll get better. And I would like to introduce us to, in case you are somebody that really, you are really interested in Power BI, I will say go for the certification. The certification it will give you a green tick that yes, this person really knows Power BI. And the certification for Power BI is PL-300, that's Microsoft Power BI Analyst exam. So depending on the country which you are, you can check online for the exam PL-300. That's Microsoft Power BI Data Analyst exam. Just check for it. And if you work in an organization as an analyst, you can actually sign up for Microsoft Learn, you know, sign up for that particular course. They will take you on the training, and then afterwards, as at now, if you have done that training, you get 50% discount on the exam itself. So you may want to check with your organization if you have that opportunity. And I will say don't stop at Power BI. Learn SQL, learn Python, learn Azure. Just keep learning, keep learning, keep learning. And then we'll be, bringing up other topics in the course or in the near future in our trainings. And I hope this would really help us in being a very good analyst in as an analyst that we have decided to be. Thank you.